Olá, our class today is about the verb tener, to have. We are going to have two topics in this video. Tener, to have, and tener que, to have to do something. First, let's review the verb tener. Tener means to have, and when you say I have, in Spanish you say yo tengo. You, informal, have. Tú tienes. He has or she has. Él tiene, ella tiene. You, formal, have. Usted tiene. Remember, for any verb we learn, these three pronouns will use the same form of the verb, although they don't mean the same thing, but they use the same form of the verb. Nosotros o nosotras tenemos, we have. Vosotros tenéis, we are not going to use because it's only used in Spain. Ellos tienen, they have. Ellas tienen, they have. And you guys have, we say ustedes tienen. All right, now let's see the verb tener in the negative form. Well, in English, I would say I don't have. He doesn't have. You don't have. But in Spanish, we don't use don't or doesn't. Instead, we are going to place no before the verb. So when you want to express I don't have, you say yo no tengo. No goes before the verb. This is your verb, and you place the no before the verb. You don't have. Tú no tienes. He doesn't have. Él no tiene. She doesn't have. Ella no tiene. You don't have. It's formal. Usted no tiene. We don't have. Nosotros or nosotras no tenemos. You guys don't have. Ustedes no tienen. They don't have. Ellos no tienen or ellas no tienen. What about in the interrogative form when you want to ask a question? Do you have something? Does he have something? Does she have something? Remember, we don't use do or does in Spanish. What do we do to ask a question? You're going to invert the subject and the verb. Your subject will go after the verb. So when you have the question, do you have a book? You ask, ¿tienes tú un libro? Let's practice a little bit. If I want to say, I have many friends, in Spanish I would say, yo tengo muchos amigos. If I want to say you, and this you is informal, you have a beautiful house. Now remember all the elements that you need to be careful here, besides using the verb tener. Because you said a beautiful house in Spanish, the adjective needs to go after your noun. So you'd say, tú tienes una casa bonita. She doesn't have brown hair. We don't use doesn't in Spanish. All you have to do is to place no before the verb. Ella no tiene pelo castaño. And finally, I have a question. Do you and your father have a book? Now, remember, I'm not asking only about you. It's you and your father. So it's like asking you guys. Do you guys have a book? So I need to use the form of the verb tienen tu padre y tú un libro. Okay, so that was the verb tener. But sometimes we are going to use the verb tener plus que in an infinitive to express obligation, to express that you have or somebody has to do something. And then in this case, you need to use tener que plus an infinitive. You conjugate the verb. You use the different forms of the verb tener that we saw, like tengo, tienes, tiene, tenemos, tienen, plus que, plus the infinitive of the verb. Now, I want you to understand that this is a chunk. And what is the meaning of que? Nothing. Que doesn't mean anything here. Que is just signalizing that you have an obligation in place, that you have to do something, okay? Now, what is infinitive? That's a new word for us. An infinitive is the basic form of a verb. In English, you can identify it by the word to before a verb. For example, when you say to speak, I know this verb is in the infinitive form. To run, to write, etc. What about in Spanish? How can I identify that a verb is in the infinitive form? Well, in Spanish, that verb will end in AR, ER, or IR. For example, hablar. I'm not going to have a to here in front, but at the end, when I look at this word and I know it's a verb and it ends in AR, ER, or IR, I know that is to speak. It's in the infinitive form. Correr, to run. Escribir, to write. That's how I can identify if a verb is in the infinitive form, in the basic form. Okay? Now let's go back here to our topic. When you want to express obligation, you're going to use tener, que. You need to conjugate tener, use the forms of the verb. Tengo, tienes, tiene, tenemos, tienen. Plus que, what does the que mean? Nothing. Just showing you it's an obligation. Plus the action that you have to do or somebody has to do. Okay? Let's see some examples. If I want to say, I have to speak on the phone, I need to say, yo tengo que hablar por teléfono. Okay? In this case, yo tengo que is my obligation. I have. Hablar, to talk on the phone. Nosotros tenemos que, obligation. Estudiar. We have to study. Let's practice a little bit. Now this time I have some mixed sentences here. Some of these sentences I'm just expressing that I have something, but others I'm expressing I have to do something. So remember, if you're just saying, I have a car, I have English class, I have a book, you don't need to use que, okay? But if you're saying, I have to do something, then you need to signalize that obligation with que. Let's see. I have Spanish class at 8. All right. Am I showing any kind of obligation here? No. I'm just saying that I have Spanish class at 8. So in this case, I say, yo tengo la clase de español a las 8. Remember, to express at, I need to say a las. Now, number 2, we have to take notes. Here I have an obligation. We have to do something. So I have to say, nosotros tenemos que, to show my obligation, tomar apuntes. You, informal, have to study. Have to study shows me that it's an obligation. You have to do something. So you say, tú tienes que estudiar. They have to listen to music in music class. They have to do something. Don't forget the que. Ellos tienen que escuchar música en la clase de música. Well, I hope that was helpful. Make sure you review this video if necessary and ask me questions in class. Gracias.